living in an environment dealing with challenges that appear to be insoluble offer opportunities for amazing people to think and act in amazing ways. We're not yet seeing the fullness of that. We're not yet experiencing that. But these are areas, no structure and no technology is going to solve the problems of the Middle East. It's going to have to be solved by human beings.
Now, leaders are often thinking, well, we can just have environments where folks can do things on their own and we're moving and we're growing. And that's really valuable as well. But what is processes, procedures? Does it still have the same role as it did 20 years ago? What is the employee's guiding light on how we function, in your opinion?
I think, Yogi, that will differ from industry to industry. The industries where process is absolutely paramount. If a pilot is flying a plane that I'm a passenger in, I would want to know that he's following the process. Mm-hmm. But I would also want to know that he has the capacity to make a decision to override the process. And that's where trust comes in. It was quite interesting. I don't know if you remember the early days of the Airbus, and there were some bad accidents at the time. There were bad crashes at the time. But what was interesting, it was such a very different philosophy between, at that time, Boeing and Airbus. Airbus was trying to create an aircraft that it didn't need the opportunity for human error was minimal, and that was fine when things went well. But when things weren't going well, it was almost impossible for the pilot to override the system. And sometimes it was because the system is so powerful, and sometimes because the pilot had become so reliant on the system that muscle was not well developed. And Boeing had a very different philosophy at the time. I'm sure now things have merged and there's not that much difference between them. I'm not sure. But those two models, that on the one hand, there are certain industries where you really want process to be paramount, and there's certain interest where process is there just to support and to help. But in all cases, you don't want the person to lose their humanity. The danger with artificial intelligence is not the machines and the robots. I'm not scared of them. I'm scared of the people who have become robots. That's much more damaging. That I, as a person, have to use process as a tool. That's really important. And the better the process, and the finer the process, and the more efficient the process, the better it is. But when I just become a factor in that process and not master of the process, that's when I start to lose my humanity. I remember once, in the days when one could go into the cockpit of a plane, taking my daughter into the cockpit and talking to the pilot, and I'm asking him about an island down that we saw through the window. And he wasn't sure what it was or where it was. And he just said, I don't need to know what that is or where that is. I can tell you to the second what time we're going to land, and to the meter, I can tell you where we're going to land. The rest of it, the machines take care of. That I found troubling in a sense, that the process is so dominated by technology that the human element is actually extracted from it completely. So I think we have to, as leaders, we have to look at that and say, what is the role of the human element, and how do we redefine the human element? So ChatGPT can write my articles now. Does that mean that I abdicate the article writing to ChatGPT? Or does my role become a different one, a more creative one, since ChatGPT can now check my grammar and all of that stuff? Do I put most of my effort now into innovative content? And how do I push the boundaries there in ways I didn't have time to do before because I'd spent so much time on the grammar, which now can be done quickly, for example.
So earlier you spoke about the change and the new wave, and, in the future, things are going to be considered with technology or with AI. What are some of the things that you notice that we need to prepare for, or we need to be aware of, especially with social interest? Social interest not relying solely on technology, versus our communities, creating strengths within our employees, teams, and having some of that, the wheel in the center and the wheel on the outside analogy you use. So what do you forecast? What do you know? What should we consider? And what should leaders now start to review and focus on as we move into this AI? It's here, and we need to just adapt and figure out how we're going to use this technology. I mean, we have to embrace it. This is where we're going. And I'd love to hear your ideas about that.
So let's stay with the aircraft analogy for a moment. So now my pilot friend is sitting in the cockpit. He's as bored as anything. He's taken off. He's got a long flight. He's set the flight path. He's got to check things. He's got to listen in to what's happening around. But basically, it's robotic. I don't know what the pilots do with their time and how they spend their time. I'm sure there are things for them to attend to, but not to use the fullness of who they are as people and the training and the intellect that they have as human beings. Now, how would it be if the pilot said, well, I don't need to fly the plane anymore because the robots are doing that better than I could do it. And I've got the co-pilot here who's taking care of things. Let me go and talk to the passengers. And the pilot walked through the plane and stopped and spoke to people and explained things to them and noticed that somebody was nervous and helped them and spoke about the company and why our company is amazing and what we do. So he would now be doing things that aren't in his job really at all, but he's free to do those things. He could be building connections with passengers in such a way that I can't come off that plane and say to myself, I'll never fly on another airline. I had no idea that they're so thoughtful, that they're so caring, because there was a connection between a senior person on the flight. He has the time to do that. Why doesn't he do that? Because it's not his job. So we've categorized him. We're turning him into a robot. Instead of saying, my goodness, we've unleashed the power of a human being who's sitting idle for an 8-hour flight when he could really be marketing our company. He could be creating connections with people in a magnificent way. And I think that applies to everything we do. How can I use technology to do the things I don't need to do? I think, Yogi, one has to be inherently lazy. I think there's an enormous value in laziness. And by laziness, I mean, I take myself an example. If I can find something that somebody else can do better than me or as well as me or almost as good as me, I really don't want to be doing that thing. Why would I want to spend my time when there's somebody else who could do it better? So I'm just so ready to delegate, whether it's to machines or to other people. There's a certain delight in me in getting rid of monotonous work. But where the laziness ends is I don't then say, well, now I can go and lie on the couch. The question is, so now I've got a whole lot of time and capacity freed up. What can I do that nobody else can do? And if we would adopt that mindset, I think we would be on the verge of such innovation, not just in the area of robotics, but we would find cures to diseases. We would find new ways to educate people. And these areas aren't changing that far. Take the school system. It's 100 years or more old. It hasn't been updated forever. And yes, so now you plug some iPads into and you're doing the same old stuff with some new technology. But we haven't yet adjusted to the fact that students don't need information anymore. So now the school teacher has to say, if my student doesn't need me for information, because they have access to better teachers than me, they can plug into the best teachers in the world in my subject. They don't need me for that. So now comes a very difficult soul-searching purpose question, because you're repurposing. So what is my purpose? It's no longer to give the student information. My purpose is now to inspire the student's curiosity. How do I go about it? And I imagine if all the teachers in the classrooms were doing that, instead of dishing out this information, which the students are able to get much more efficiently. In all these areas, I think we've got to say to ourselves, what can I delegate to machines, and celebrate that? Just be so relieved that can be delegated. But now, how do I do something that machines and even other people can't do as well? Now, take that area of writing. Are we losing the whole capacity to write? And writing as a process of developing self, not just of producing an output, but of self-development, being able to journal, being able to write a piece, to be able to translate one's thought processes into writing. Are we losing that capacity? How do I make sure that I keep that, but still use technology to be able to do it more effectively and more efficiently?
So whereabouts are you living? Are you in New York? Are you abroad right now?
I'm living in a very hot spot at the moment. I'm living in Israel, so I'm right in the Middle East, and as you know, it's an incredibly intense. It always has been intense. It is an intense society. It's an intense place, and the issues the country is faced with and the region is faced with are issues that appear to be almost insoluble. So living in an environment dealing with challenges that appear to be insoluble offer opportunities for amazing people to think and act in amazing ways. We're not yet seeing the fullness of that. We're not yet experiencing that. But these are areas no No structure and no technology is going to solve the problems of the Middle East. It's going to have to be solved by human beings who are able to build trust, human beings who are able to inspire one another. It's one of these areas where I'm really watching leadership and leadership failure hour by hour, never mind day by day or week by week. Ordinary people doing amazing things, amazing acts of leadership, and leaders doing things that are incredibly dumb, and just realizing how tenuous the art of leadership really is, and how fragile it is.
Thank you for sharing, David. And yes, indeed, being from outside, we can sense the chaos, the challenges that folks may be experiencing. If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website yogipateltte.com.